Okay, so I'm recording. So we're going to talk about that today, and I'm going to I have some slides. I'm going to walk you through a platform called Tracker. It's a influencer identification and management software platform, just to kind of show you and give you a taste as to how to identify influencers or how to track, understand what they say and their audiences and things like that. But I'm going to give you some assignments for next week on identifying certain influencers using whatever means you can use. Google search is probably what it's going to be, or Instagram searches, and try to find and identify some top influencers, and then present to the rest of the class why you think they're the top influencers in fashion or photography or what have you. So we're going to spend a lot of time on this. And again, I think it's important for all of you, regardless of where you decide to work, right? Influencer marketing is really the next big thing. So I'm going to share my screen and talk through. Can y'all see my screen? Yeah, okay. All right. Now, as we talk about influencer marketing, I want you to just kind of remember that if you work for a consumer brand like Nike, or you work for a B2B brand like Splunk, or a healthcare brand like Kaiser, or some hospital system, influencer marketing, there is influencer marketing in each of those types of industries, but they're done very differently. And I think most of us have had or read articles on Adweek or DigiDay or others that are focused more on the consumer lifestyle influencers, the fashion influencers, the health, the makeup influencers, the ones that are on Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram. You see articles all the time. In fact, there was one that came out a couple years ago about these influencers would like go rent these private jets and take photos of themselves in these private jets, so that they can appear to be, more wealthy than who they are, than what they are. And I just think that's, consumers are smart enough to see through that. And so that fad kind of came and went, although I still think that a lot of influencers do hype up their influence of a variety of different ways. And we're going to talk about that. But I want to go back to this because this is the mecca of marketing, right? This is basically how you as a marketer, how you as a brand are surround sounding your audiences with relevant and consistent and repetitive storytelling. And influencer activation, you'll see here, I'm going to use my mouse. It's down here on the right. It's kind of in between, earned and shared. And actually, it's kind of everywhere. Influencer marketing can be weaved through owned media, paid media, earned and shared. It's just activated differently. And so I need to update this slide. So I'll do that for next semester. But I think it's important that we think about, as, if you go to a company or, you're interviewing and they ask you, well, we have a campaign launching, what are you going to, what are some things that you might think about doing from an execution perspective? So you can talk about peso, you could talk about all these things, mentioning influencer marketing and how that plays into it. And the fact that, influencer marketing is essentially amplified third-party voices who are talking about, quote unquote, endorsing your brand through social media content. Okay. So just remember that as we go through these slides and just the rest of this class. So here's a basic definition. I'm not going to read through this. You can read through this at your own free will, but I just wanted to add this here for reference at some point. But I want to talk about the why. And so this is just some data points that I've found over the years. Some of these data points are actually a couple of years old. But if you think about it, like the reason why we read reviews on Instagram, or excuse me, on Amazon or Yelp reviews is because we trust the community, right? We trust what people say. If there's a pizza place in my area who says, we make the best pizza in the Bay Area, I don't necessarily believe them. I don't think any of you would either. But if I go to their Yelp reviews and I see review after review after review saying, this pizza is the best I've ever had, which, by the way, my pizza in Morgan Hill, oh my God, it's the best pizza in the Bay Area. I'm just telling you, try it. So I love pizza. Pepperoni, I can eat a large, seriously, if I'm that hungry. But pizza is pizza. Influence is, it's looking at other people for validation, right? So, my daughter, she's the type of person, my oldest daughter who's in college as well, she reads Amazon reviews always, and she dwells on Amazon reviews. Like if she finds one negative Amazon review, then she's like, nope, I'm not going to get it. And I had to explain to her, like, there's people who first read what it is, right? If it's a Yelp review and they're complaining about the service, it's very different from them complaining about the taste of something or finding a cockroach in their soup, right? So, just kind of, you have to weigh the differences and weigh what people are saying. But for the most part, we trust other people, right? We trust, if I were to tell you right now that I have the Apple iPhone 12 and I show you all these cool things, you're going to see the cool commercials, you're going to see the billboards, and you're going to end up buying, right? At some point, maybe when your contract is expired or when you can upgrade your phone. So we trust other people, especially people like us. We trust academia, right? Whenever there's research, if you think about COVID-19, right? And Dr. Fauci, now he's more medical healthcare, but I could also classify him as being in academia, right? He is, he's works for the government, but he has a PhD and he's really smart. So people like that are typically trusted. Now, the media is not so much trusted. Politicians are not so much trusted. And that's been a trend for years. And so, but we trust each other. So keep that in mind, just again, as we think about influencer marketing and actually and how that integrates into programs. A couple of other data points here, engagement. So this is a statistic from, I believe, the Boston Consulting Group, or maybe one of the other, where they talk about 67% of shoppers spend more online after reading positive recommendations. So sometimes you'll see there's this certain ice cream that I like. It's called, what's the name of it? I can't think of it. Anyway, when you go to buy their ice cream online, they have reviews literally right by the products. So you can scroll through the products and you can read the reviews. And the more you read, the more you want to buy. Now the question is, are they posting all the reviews, or are they only posting the ones that are positive? So that's just a question mark that I had, but it's really good ice cream. Same thing with this clothing line that I like to purchase from, called Aesthetic Revolution. They have great clothes, and but they have reviews that people are talking about in terms of like the right size, right? If you get a large, is it a large or is it too small? Should you order one size up type of thing? So all of those reviews are from real people, and I hope they are, right? Because if they're not, that's kind of deceiving, and that's actually against the law, I believe. So and that's what prompts us to want to shop and want to buy and purchase and then come back. And we've talked about this other data point, right? 3 to 5 times before we buy, meaning you have to, a consumer has to interact with your brand through some type of media, whether it's a billboard advertisement, whether it's word of mouth, whether it's a Google search or something in the feed. They have to see something 3 to 5 times before they actually believe you. So if you're trying to reposition your brand or trying to sell products, they're not going to buy on the first impression, right? There's going to be multiple impressions needed in order to convince this buyer to buy your product. Okay, so just keep that in mind from a data point standpoint. So this is an example of a campaign that I did many years ago, and actually got an award for this. And does anybody know who T-Java is? I don't see anybody because I can't. There we go. T-Java. You ever see T-Java in Trader Joe's? Okay. Yeah. So it's that ugly looking bottle of iced tea. And honestly, I have to put mass amounts of lemon and sugar to make it taste anything remotely good. But people like that natural flavor. It's 100% natural. And so they came to us and said, we want to launch a program, but we want to drive sales. We want to drive sales in LA, Los Angeles. And so come back to us with the proposal. So we came back with part of our proposal was an influencer program. So this is one piece of it. We did a lot of owned media. So you can see here on the left, this was 2015, I believe. No, 2013. So this was the creative that we had for Instagram. And you'll see the tagline, like, nothing can be perfect nothing. That was essentially our idea that we came up with based on some audience analytics that we did. So this is branded content, right? We published it on the T-Java pages. We put paid media behind it. On the right, these are influencers, right? This is influencer content. Now, I don't know about you guys, but like some of this content just looks like stock photography. I mean, it's super awesome. Like if you think about like this one here, right? And all we did was we paid them, right? Number one. And then we said, look, we're going to send you product. We just want you to put our product in, in your photography on Instagram within, we don't want you doing things specific for us. So just add it to whatever you already do. So if you're, out there on the beach getting a suntan and you spend a lot of time by the pool, well, then figure out a way to put the T-Java by the pool. If you are barbecuing all the time and or going on picnics with your kids, well, just include it somewhere. So we give them complete creative control to display the product. And it doesn't even look too, like, you probably wouldn't even notice right away by looking at this picture here that's even a T-Java bottle, right? Now, if you zoom in, and it was, I made this smaller so that it fits, but like, it looks just like a natural setting. And if you compare the content, right, it's like, okay, we have real people, real scenarios from influencers talking and placing, T-Java tea in their lifestyle photography. And then you have stuff over here, which this is stock photography because we didn't do any like production for them. It was basically, we had to use what was available through stock photography. So just notice the quality, right? The quality of content from the right to the left. It's like comparing night and day. And so we had this campaign, it was 3 months, and we ended up selling, like, we killed our ROI. Like, it was, I don't remember what we were measured against, but in terms of sales number, but we sold, we actually were very successful in selling product in Los Angeles. And all these influencers are based in the LA area. So this is influencer marketing, right? It's negotiating with influencers. It's talking about, here, we will give you product. We will pay you this much in exchange for this, right? Now, we did not sign a contract with these influencers. It was done through a third party. And so nowadays, though, it's a little bit more formal, right? So if you partner with an influencer, you have to sign a contract. And that's important because they may not deliver on what you want them to do after you've paid them. So always get into a contract, whether it's a B2B influencer or a consumer influencer. And they have templates. Like, you can Google influencer template or influencer contract template, and there's already some out there on the internet. Here's a couple of other examples that I took, and here's a different way that brands have used influencers in their content. So if you look on the left, you have Sony, right? And they didn't take this picture, right? This picture was taken by Claire, right? Or who is that? Claire something. Now, what they probably did was they said, hey, Claire, we want you to, we want to partner with you. We'll pay you $5,000. I don't know if that's the amount or not, but we'll pay you $5,000. We want you to take and send you a phone. We want you to take X number of photos. We want you to post on your own timeline. Oh, and by the way, we own all the photos that you post. So we have rights to use it. So that's why here on the branded channel, they posted a photo of Claire's, but they do give her credit, right? They put her handle here at the bottom right-hand corner, but then they put their logo on it, Sony, Xperia. One thing that they did not do, which I think is a miss, and if I was an influencer, I would have like negotiated that they do this. They didn't tag her in the post copy, right? I would have tagged her in the post copy to help, first of all, if I'm an influencer and, my content's getting shared with 1.1 million people, I'm going to want people to know that it was me and hopefully increase my followers, right? Would you guys, like, how many of you would like see her handle and say, let's go see what Claire Minari is up to, and then literally type her, URL into Instagram? Like, you're not going to do that. Nobody does that. So I think that was a miss on the influencer's part. I would have negotiated that in the contract. And then over here, I don't know, this has to be influencer. I don't know if this is or not, but I believe, I believe it is, but they didn't really give any credit whatsoever. Even if they negotiated for it, it wasn't, there's nothing visible here from an influencer. So, all right, I'm going to transition a little bit, but this is super important, guys. Okay. And I just kind of gave you a glimpse into consumer influencers, not even how it works. We're going to get into that, but just a high level overview of, how to work with influencers, how to partner with them. The fact that, some of these influencers, you're paying them anywhere between, $500 per post to $10,000 to LeBron James. It's like $250,000 for one post. So maybe more. So again, it's not cheap either, right? So there's nothing for free. Now there's certain things you can do on the B2B side that are going to drive a lot of engagement with influencers, but even then it's not as effective as if it were some type of paid partnership. Now, I'm just going to ask with a show of hands, how many of you know what a market is? If I were to say the market's going great, or the fast food market, the oil and gas market, the autonomous driving market. When I say market, can anybody just kind of, share with me what they how they would define market, if you do know what it means?
Place to buy a certain product or service?
Exactly. That's exactly. It's an economy, right? And there are thousands of markets in the world, right? There's a global market, which is everything. There's a US market, which is all the businesses buying and selling products in the US. But then even within that, there is a market for Pampers. There's a market for diapers. There's a market for all natural, those wool diapers that, you recycle and wash, which people still do that. I don't see why. That's a different market than the market for Pampers. You have a market for, this non-allergic, shampoo. That's a market which, and another market is just general shampoo for kids, right? So there's thousands of markets, even within like the context of a particular product. The mobile phones. How many of you have ever heard of track phone? Anybody? Okay, one person. There's track phone is a mobile. It's just like AT&T, and it's like Verizon and T-Mobile, but they're a smaller company, and their market is lower income. They sell like prepaid cell phones. A lot of people say that track phones are like drug dealer phones, because you can buy like a prepaid phone and not get tracked, right? And so that was always the joke. They were a client many years ago. So even that's a market. So the reason why I explain all of these markets is that in any one market, now remember, there are thousands of markets, okay? But in any one market, within that market, there is 1% of the population that creates content. Okay, so for every 100 people that represent a market, one person is the content creator. They're the influencer. Now, years ago, it was the media. It was journalists, right? Because they had power. They had the ability to reach mass audiences through circulation of magazines and newspapers. But then social media came around, and the ability for anybody to publish on the internet, when it became popular and everybody began to do it, all of a sudden it's not just journalists anymore. It's any content creator, right? So 1% of that market is creating content. Okay. Now, 9% typically will repackage that content, provide their own perspective on it, and then share it. Okay. So, I call them the audience. Some people call them ambassadors or advocates, but they basically, they're very active on social media, not just creating content, but they're reading reviews, they're writing reviews. They are, in forums like Reddit and others. They're, responding to people, and they're just very active. And by the way, they're also influential, right? Anybody on the internet has influence, right? And even if you're not on the internet and you have a people that surround you who listen to what you say or value your opinion, you influence them in certain areas, right? So 1% creates content, 9% share and repackage it, and then everybody else, I call them here the market. I sometimes refer to them as lurkers, right? All that they do is rely on word of mouth. They read peer recommendations. They don't publish anything. Like they don't have, they may have social media, but all they do is like watch, right? And they watch people, but they don't create anything. But they're highly influenced by the 1% and 9%. So, think of this through the context of sneakers, or the context of, comic books, right? This model applies to any market. It's just, and by the way, it applies to the entire internet. This was actually a model that was created years ago by a gentleman. His last name was Nielsen, but not from Nielsen Research. It was a different Nielsen. And he talked about, in the early days of the internet, there was only 1% publishing content on the internet. And he talks about how it's shifted, right? Because now people have more access and technology and media to now publish on the internet. So he talks about this model, but from an influencer standpoint, it every time we do an influencer analysis, this is always the case. The top 1% are driving the conversation. Not to mention that it's not that the 9% doesn't create content. That's not what we're saying here. We're saying that they create content. Everybody creates content in the 1 and 9%, but the 9% typically are repackaging it and providing their perspective and then sharing it. Okay. And then 90%, they're Googling it. They're looking for information. They're influenced, and they essentially determine whether or not the 1 and 9% are doing a good job of storytelling, if you think about it. So if I'm a brand and, I'm thinking about reaching the broad market, like, so answer me this. If I'm Nike and I want to reach the world, where do you think I'm going to want to advertise? Anybody? Anybody? Am I on? Are you on?
Instagram?
Well, probably, but like the Super Bowl, right? The Super Bowl ads, right? And with the Super Bowl ad, or even ads on, on television during prime time, that reaches everybody. That reaches the market, right? If you're smart about, figuring out who you're targeting and making sure you're targeting the right, either channel or the right show, you're going to reach the broad market, everybody else, and it's very expensive. Now, the 1 and 9%, it's different. If if you're not Nike and you don't have millions of dollars of ad spend, then you're going to want to figure out, well, let's maybe build an influencer program and let's seed influencers with a pair of new sneakers. And let's maybe do a documentary on how, buying a brand new pair of Jordans are going to make me play basketball better or make me jump higher or run faster, and follow them over the course of 3 months, right? That is an influencer program. And the idea is that you are trying to reach the broad market through an influencer marketing program. Okay. So that's the idea of this, right? If you can activate one influencer and you're reaching this 9%, well, they're going to repackage and share. And all of a sudden it just starts to grow, right? Like kind of like multi-level marketing, right? It's like a pyramid scheme. So that is the concept. Now, this concept doesn't necessarily apply to consumer marketing, only because it's such a different environment, because what you have is you have influencers who are professional influencers, right? And that's how they make money. So they may not necessarily be passionate about fashion, but they're fashionable. And so they're doing influencer work around fashion, but they might also be doing tutorials about makeup or tutorials about, vegan lifestyle or cooking or recipes. So it's hard to find this 1% because consumer influencers are very diverse and it's almost a profession for them. So I don't always say that the 1-9-90 model of influence is applicable to all influencers, but I would say in B2B and healthcare, it is. It's still very applicable. I want to talk about just how you measure influence, and this is super important. And we have a technology platform, and we also have kind of our own algorithms that helps us rank certain influencers. But there's 4 data points that we like to look at: reach, relevance, resonance, and reference. And let me talk through each one. This might be on the midterm or final, by the way. Okay, so reach, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Reach is how large their social network is. Okay, and I'm going to show you an example in a second when we go to Tracker. But if you sum all of their followers on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, if it's 5 million people, well, that is their potential reach. If they publish something on their social, they can potentially reach 5 million people. Relevance is how often they are talking about a topic. So again, if I am Nike or Puma or New Balance and I want to do a program, an influencer program, and I'm looking to find influential sneakerheads, well, I'm not going to want the person who's only mentioned sneakers once, like last year, or maybe last month, or maybe once every quarter. This person will mention the fact that they like sneakers, but they're not an authority. If they're an authority in a particular topic, that means they're writing about it. They're conversing with their community. And so relevance is, again, how often are they talking about the topic that is important to your business? Now, when they do publish that content, right, on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, what have you, that's when resonance comes in, because resonance then measures the engagement on that content. So if I talk a lot about sneakers, If my relevance is high, but nobody's like engaging with my content, well, that might be a reason to not want to partner with that influencer, right? Because an influencer is going to generate discussion, right? They're reaching the 9%, and they're going to cause that 9% to engage. And so if the sneaker influencer is publishing lots of content about sneakers, and when he or she does, they're getting likes, comments, shares, retweets, links, then that tells me that their community looks to them for content around sneakers. Okay. Now the last point is reference, because here's the thing: you can buy followers, you can buy followers, you can buy relevance. You don't need to buy it. All you need to do is talk a lot. So you can buy followers, you can manipulate your content, or just by posting a lot, and you can buy engagement. You can buy tweets, you can buy likes, you can buy followers. It's a thing, right? It's huge. And I think the social networks are getting smarter about, I guess, shutting down the spam sites that are doing this, but there's new ones that pop up. And so with the reference, so now what we're doing is we're introducing other influencers. And the question is, okay, if we're looking at influencer A, who is influential in sneakers, is this influencer mentioned by any other influencers? Because you can't really game that piece of it. Or better yet, if it's B2B, is this influencer mentioned in the media by a journalist, or did they reference a report that the influencer put out? Because that's what journalists do, right? They find influential people, they get their comment, and they write their article, and they cite their source for comments. And by the way, you can just do that with the Google search. You can just literally Google the influencer's first and last name and look through the results. Or if they tell you, yeah, I've been mentioned in Forbes, all you need to do is Google their first name in quotation marks and then capital AND, Forbes. And if there are no results, that means they're lying to you. So there's a lot of ways to validate reference, but these 4 data points are what we use to isolate certain influencers and partner with them. So I'm going to pause there and open it up for any questions.
So for the last one, for the reference part, so it's kind of like a credibility check for what is essentially already a third party.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
Okay,
that's a great way of putting it, Lisa. Yeah, totally. So the last slide I want to show you is this slide here. But this is kind of outdated. So I'm going to talk through this for a second. First, let me start off by saying that consumer marketing, influencer marketing within consumer brands, is a billion-dollar industry, right? There are people who pay their bills. There are people who feed their kids, who pay their mortgage based purely on partnering with brands and working with brands. So they're making lots of money. There's some instances where, Revlon or L'Oreal or Bobbi Brown or Lancome or whoever, they're paying influencers anywhere between $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a video. And that video is only 5 minutes. And so there's a lot of commerce happening between consumer brands and marketers. Now, up until a couple of years ago, usually B2B marketing, influencer marketing within B2B, there wasn't really an option it just wasn't very common to pay influencers. Now you may ask, well, what is an influencer in the B2B space? Right? What does that mean? And believe it or not, there's a lot of, CIOs and CTOs and entrepreneurs and founders and people who are working for companies and just have very much high influence and talking about artificial intelligence or robotics or automation or whatever. Like, those are influencers that you can work with, right? And, in some cases, if they work for a large brand, they probably won't accept payment. But many of them who work maybe for smaller startups, or they're a consultant, or maybe they're a journalist. They used to be a journalist and now they're a consultant type of thing. You can actually pay influencers to do a lot of different things. And so the thing is you can't pay journalists, right? You can, that's against the law. And I believe it's against the law, but journalists won't even go there. Like, if you tried to bribe a journalist, they would probably never write about you again. And they may even write about the fact that you tried to bribe them. So you can't pay journalists, and that's the whole reason why PR is important, because if you can't pay journalists, then you're going to want your PR team to pitch them, right? Okay, so let's just talk about a couple of things real quick. So influencer marketing, it's expensive, right? You pay influencers. You sometimes you can give them product if it's like a really nice consumer technology product. They may, do a couple posts for you. It's fairly easy to measure because typically what you'll do is if you're a consumer brand and you want people to buy products, you're going to give your influencers unique tracking URLs. So think about like when you click on a link from Instagram or, even a blog, check to see the URL. There's probably some type of code there. And what that code is for, it's for tracking. So the brand, if I'm Nike again, and I have 10 influencers and we are, they're driving people through their content, they are linking to Nike.com for purchase. And I can look at the 10 influencers and say, okay, well, these top 3 influencers drove $5,000 a week in sales simply by posting online. And other people would click on it and scroll and potentially buy. So tracking is fairly easy because, again, as long as it's done correctly. Now, usually with an influencer program for consumer brands, it's usually around a campaign, like a product launch or, an event. Pretty much that's usually you're not going to have consumer influencer marketing for consumer brands being constant. Like it's not going to be something that's always on. Now there's always exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, it's usually around new product launches and things like that. So it's kind of like a up and down, right? In terms of engagement results. It's not anything, you're not going to see a hockey stick growth when you're working with influencers, unless you have, unlimited budget. Now with consumer, I'm just going down the left here. Influencers, for consumer, this is a little outdated. Again, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter's still big, guys. Twitter's still big for gaming influencers. Like a lot of gamers are using Twitter to engage with their audiences. Facebook also. I would also add, obviously, TikTok being there now. Even blogs. There's a lot of folks who are writing blogs in WordPress. And so they will write a review about a product. You send them a laptop, they write a review, you pay them $1,000. Now they have to disclose, though, that's the thing. They have to disclose the fact that they were paid. And that is a law by the FTC. So there was instances in the past where Kim Kardashian she was hired by this makeup brand and she didn't disclose. And so she got into a lot of trouble. If you Google her FTC and like Kim Kardashian, you'll read the articles, but you have to disclose because you can't, otherwise you're kind of deceiving consumers, right? Because if I'm a fan of Kim Kardashian and I'm on her Instagram feed and she's talking about this new, lip liner that's amazing and waterproof and whatever, then, and I go buy it, but she didn't tell me that they actually paid her to do that, it's kind of deceiving me as a consumer. And that's what the FTC is trying to protect us from, okay? Now, there's a lot of influencer agencies. So now, some of these agencies are technology focused. Some of them are basically, they have a network of influencers that they already work with. So I can go, like if I go to Clever's a great example. Clever's actually here in the Bay Area. Some of my old students from early on actually work there. And it's an influencer marketing agency. They used to be called Clever Girls. But now they have, I guess, men who work with them. So, because it was all female for a long time, but they changed the name to Clever, which I thought is clever. And what they do is brands will go to them and say, hey, I have $30,000, create a campaign for me. And then they will basically tap into their network, right? They have a network of influential moms and girls and boys and dads and, whatever the ask is, and they'll say, okay, guys, I have an opportunity. Now this is all happening in the back end, right? They use their technology to say, okay, we'll pay you $5 for, to do these 5 posts. And here's the brief and here's what you should say. And then all these influencers will, raise their hand or somehow be selected. And then Clever will take the money, right? You pay them the $30,000 and then they pay their influencers. Now, I don't know how much they mark it up, but that's how it works with like things like Clever. There's another one called IZEA. IZEA is pretty interesting. The CEO, Ted Murphy, is a really good friend of mine. Look it up. It's IZEA. They're doing a lot of stuff. They're innovating quite a bit, but they've built this marketplace. It's a technology. Think about eBay. And if I go to eBay, I can go in as a buyer. I can go in as a seller. It's the same thing with Isaiah. I can go in as a brand or I can go in as an influencer. And if I go in as a brand, what I'm doing is I'm looking for influencers who I can partner with, right? For anything. So I create my profile. I type in searches. I search for fashion. I get a list of people who are, in the fashion industry or influencers in fashion. And I can select, say, hey, we want to, now it's all not automated, but it's all through technology. We want to work with you. Here's what we're paying. Here's what we're asking. And then they're facilitating commerce and relationships through technology. So there's no one you really, unless it's for like a large company who spends millions or a couple 100,000, usually it's self-service. Any brand can go in, create a profile, and hire influencers, just like you can on Fiverr, right? You go to Fiverr, you go in and you pay someone $10 to do your logo. It's the same situation. You go in, you pay them $10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 to write a blog post or to write a tweet or whatever it is you want them to do. Okay. So FTC, now again, I talked about that. Consumer brands have always been pretty careful with that. And then fraud. So as I said a little while ago, there's a lot of fraud happening. And, when you partner with an influencer with millions of followers and they generate no sales or engagement, that could be a key indicator that they bought their influencers and they're kind of faking it. Now on the B2B side, it's a little bit different, but when I wrote this slide, it's the market has changed. I did this in 2018, I believe. And, it's still expensive because technology brands are still hiring agencies to do this, right? So there's a cost there. It could be, $5K a month, $10K a month, $20K a month, but they're hiring agencies to go find and engage with influencers. Now, what's been the issue and challenge for B2B forever, and I don't think it'll ever go away, is the ability to measure, right? Nobody does, no CIO or CTO goes to, a technology brand's website and buys a data center. Like they don't invest $1 million through, a checkout process or a shopping cart experience. And that purchase process is a really, sometimes 12 to 18 months. So it's really hard to measure the effectiveness or attribute a program to a particular purchase. So that's just something to consider. Also with B2B, sometimes you can have an influencer program and not engage with influencers whatsoever, right? And all it is it's research and listening. So if you identify a group of influencers in, let's just say, electrical vehicles, right? There's a lot of new electric cars coming out, right? I think Ford have their Mustang. There's a new electric Mustang which looks slick. But all these brands are now building electrical cars, right? Tesla was the first one. There's a lot of influencers talking about autonomous driving, electrical car, being good for the environment, being, just the fact that the cool factor, right? And so if you understand who the influencers are and you just seriously monitor what they say and listen for insights and incorporate that into your content, that is very effective. And we do that a lot for clients. And guess what? There's no engagement with influencers whatsoever. We don't call them. We don't retweet them. We just simply do an analysis and say, okay, the core influencers that we're, maybe we've identified 20, 30 influencers. Well, they don't really mention when they're talking about electrical vehicles, they don't say electrical vehicles. Like that is not vernacular that they use. Maybe they use autonomous vehicles, or is it autonomous cars, autonomous driving? All these things are like synonymous, but if you understand the language that they use and then incorporate it in your content, then you become that much more relevant from a brand standpoint. So you don't always need to execute programs and engage with influencers to have a program like this. Most of the influencers are journalists, analysts, bloggers, and as I said, like influential technologists. And the networks that they pretty much use for the most part, very different than consumer. LinkedIn is one, and the LinkedIn blogs. Twitter is still very large. Blog, contributed articles and bylines. I would also say that even like TikTok is interesting because I'm starting to see some B2B brands and influencers start to use TikTok. So I don't know if they're necessarily reaching the right people, but I guess time will tell. And then from a software standpoint, by the way, I forgot to mention on the consumer side, there's probably 30 software platforms that you can pay 10, 12, 13, 15K a month to get access to the software. And what it allows you to do is find influencers and track them. If you are paying them, it facilitates the payment. It tracks their likes, comments, and shares when they post about your brand. So it's like this full service, it's, influencer marketing or influencer management platform. There's like 30 or 40. On the B2B side, there's two. There's Analytica and Tracker. Now, Tracker is also used by a lot of consumer brands too, but I found really good results in using Tracker from a B2B and technology standpoint. Now, the FTC it's not that applicable, but I got to say that it will be, because, we are seeing a lot more pay for play with influencers. So you pay them, and, they write a blog post, or they do a video about your technology, or they interview your CEO. So, but the difference is that with B2B influencer marketing, you're not selling anything, right? It's more about like thought leadership. So if I'm a company who works in, autonomous driving, and I'm Tesla as an example, and I want to do an influencer program, and I find 10 influencers in autonomous driving. Now, we're not going to go tell them to go tell people to buy Tesla. Like that people just don't do that. But what we would do is we might have them write a video or do a video, and maybe it's a review of the new Model Y or an upcoming Tesla that's coming out. And maybe they take it for a day and they document their experience. Or maybe they write a blog post about the future of autonomous driving, and they post it on LinkedIn, right? And now they're not necessarily associating themselves. They don't work for Tesla, but Tesla is amplifying it. They are giving some editorial direction into what these influencers will write about. But, you would never tell them what to write about, just guiding them, use these hashtags. Here's one message we'd love for you to include in your content. So that's that. And then lastly, fraud. This is actually wrong now, because there is a lot of fake influencers on the internet, on the B2B side, and it's all over the place. So anyhow, those are the main differences, but the concept is still the same, right? You identify the right influencers, and you enable them to, or you empower them to essentially advocate for your brand, through some type of paid program. Okay. All right. Can y'all still see my screen? Yeah. All right. So this is Tracker. Now, these are influencers who are in our database, but because we've added them for different projects, right? So let's start off by doing a new search for influencers. So anybody, can anybody just out there just tell me what a topic, like, what industry do we want to search for influencers? Fitness. Okay. So what we have here is, let me just move this thing. Why is it like that? Okay. All right. So you have 3 boxes here. There's bio, content, and interest. Let's start with bio. Okay. So if we want to do fitness, the first thing I might do is just type in fitness, hit enter. What it's doing is it's searching the internet for influential people who have fitness in their bio. And that bio can include, their bio on YouTube, their bio on Instagram, their bio on Twitter, pretty much anywhere in their bio. If it has fitness in it, then they are going to show up in this search. Now we have Roberta, we have Eva, we have this buff dude Lazar. So let's narrow it down a little bit. So let's say we only want to do influencers in the US, because this is everybody. So we're going to go here to location. And by the way, most platforms work just like this. So, once you understand at a very high level how it works, you can pretty much navigate any software. So, okay, so different people, right? The first 3 people were not necessarily part of, or located in the US. Now, when you're scrolling, there's a few things you can see, right? You can see over here on the right, you see reach, resonance, and you have audience, right? So you can see all the channels that they're active. So she has 2 Instagram pages. She has a Snapchat page. She has YouTube. She has Facebook. And it looks like she has a couple different blogs. She has also a Wikipedia page. And so that's one thing to just consider. And then also over here, it'll show you how large her network is by channel. So for example, if you just hover over the audience, it'll say, okay, 36,000 Twitter followers, 4.2 million Instagram followers, 1.67 Facebook followers, and 29,000 YouTube subscribers. Okay. So it gives you a little sense into, how large her network is across the entire ecosystem. Now, let's say, for example, you want someone who is talking, let's change it up a little bit, okay? Let's say, for example, you want a journalist who is into fitness. There's a couple things you can do here. You can, so right now we're searching bio. This little orange filter basically says that's what it's telling us. So let's also type in journalist. Now, what we're looking for here is what's going to, what they will show us is, see, that's, I knew that was going to happen. Okay. It's not an, it's an or statement. Right now, it's basically searching for any influencer that has journalist or fitness in their bio, which isn't what we're looking for, right? We want a journalist who's writing about fitness. So if that's the case, we're going to delete fitness from the bio and we're going to go into content. So let's just do fitness. So now what we're saying is we're looking for any person with journalist in their bio who talks about fitness. And here we go. We have this investigative journalist here. We have a journalist from Estrella TV. We have these other people who have journalists in their bio. By the way, not all these people are real journalists. Like they're not like working for ABC. A lot of people say that they're journalists and, you know, they're not necessarily a journalist that's writing for a publication. They're like, you know, some influencers just pretend to be journalists and they're not. So again, journalist writing about fitness. Now look over here to the right. You still have all the same data points, but you also have this count. What this is saying is that Barry has mentioned fitness, that one keyword, 1,900 times in the last year. So that goes back to what I was saying earlier, relevance, right? How often is this person talking about fitness? Now, let's say, for example, you want an influencer who's influential in fitness and fashion. You might, well, let's continue to build out this keyword list, because what are some other keywords that people use when they're talking about working out or fitness? Anybody?
Calories.
What else? Is FitFam? I see FitFam all the time. What else?
Fitness Pal.
Calories. I mean, different exercises.
Okay.
Workout.
Weightlifting.
Gym.
Bulking.
Bulking. Was that you, Luis? Are you
Yeah.
bulking? Are you bulking?
Kind of.
I'm joking. All right. So what we've done here is we've now notice it's changed. They're ranking the results based on their algorithm. They're basically saying based on these keywords, Pedro is the top influencer. Now, he doesn't have the most followers, but there's other factors in here that determine influence, like engagement, things like that. So this person has mentioned, I'm going to scroll over this, gym, fitness, and FitFam. Now, it doesn't tell you per se how many times he's mentioned gym versus fitness versus FitFam, but just as an aggregate, how many times has he mentioned these three keywords? So you can scroll and you can, maybe you just want men, maybe you just want females, but still though, I don't see like actual journalists. So, well, maybe, let's see. Nutrition consultant for the Cartoon Network, maybe. Right here, freelance journalist Vogue, okay? So she's a freelance journalist. She writes for Vogue. She has a pretty decent sized network. She's written 82 times about fitness and gym. So this might be some person I might want to work with, okay? But let's continue to build out the keyword list, because journalists, how else do journalists describe themselves? Like, what do they call themselves?
Reporters.
Yes. What else?
Writers.
No. Well, yes, but then we want like real journalists, not necessarily a writer or an author. What about columnist?
Editor.
Editor, exactly. What about editor-in-chief too? So you have to use quotes here. Editor. Technically, you could probably still get it with just editor because it's in the word. Let's see what we have. All right, different group of people here. Perez Hilton, obviously, he's a journalist, right? So different set of people, right? Not a bunch of like, well, maybe this, he works for Men's Health Magazine, right? So you can see how looking for influencers, you have to be very specific, right? You just you can't say, oh, I want to find fitness influence. Oh, a pepperoni pizza. Now I'm more hungry. You can't just say, I want to find a fitness influencer, right? There's other things that you need to do. Let's say, for example, there was a sport, there's a sports correspondent, right? Let's say, I'm getting a lot of sports people. I don't want sports. I want to exclude sports. All you would do is you type in a minus sign, sports. And there you go. That guy's gone. Okay. Now, let's say, for example, you want to explore, let's see, where's that Vogue person? Oh, Carolina, she works for Telemundo. Oh, maybe we'll do her. Dang. This dude. Okay, editor-in-chief at Chic Vegan. Okay, vegan. All right. So let's go to her profile. So we clicked on her link, and now everything here is related to her. So again, very similar to what we just looked at. We can see her audience size by channel. Her reach number is 92, and that's an index basically of all the influencers who we searched for. The person with the most influencers or the most followers has 100. And so within that particular data set, she's pretty high up there. Doesn't mean has the most reach over every influencer in the world, just that based on these parameters, based on this list here, this group of people, she has a 92 reach, which means it's pretty high. And her resonance, meaning, okay, it's is pretty high as well. 57, that means when she's publishing content, people are engaging with it. Okay. So it's all relative to the data set that we're looking at. So when you click on her, you can do a couple of things. Whoops. Okay, so there's some tabs down here. This is just content, right? This is the content that she's published. Just by a quick glance, you can see she writes a lot of blogs, right? And if I wanted to go check one of these out, this vegan butternut squash mac and cheese, I can click on it. And there we go. Okay, so how do I? There we go. Someone's cooking, I can hear it. All right. So a quick glance at their content. She writes a lot of long form blogs. You can see some tweets here. You can see a Facebook update here. I don't see anything, quick glance on Instagram. I don't see anything. Is she even active on Instagram? Yes. How big is her network there? Oh, 4,000 followers. So maybe she just hasn't posted recently. But, here's, again, this is her profile. Her content, you can actually add other keywords to see what she's talking about. So if I wanted to add more things, this right here gives us just the basics, her email address, if we wanted to reach out to her and partner with her. Her footprint is basically a breakdown of her channel specifics. So you have her blog. She has 10,000 links or inbound links. She has 11,000 followers on Pinterest and so on. So you can kind of start to gauge and say, well, maybe this is an influencer that we don't necessarily want to work with her on Instagram because her network isn't that big, but maybe Twitter's the right platform. Okay. It gives you engagement rates and things like that. So it's good data to have. I can also look at her audience. So these are people that follow her. And I can see, okay, 40% are real people. That's interesting. I wonder, this is regular people. Suspicious accounts, 23%. So that tells me that maybe she purchased followers at one point, right? I don't know if she did or not, but that's what this is suggesting. You can also see audience growth, engagement rate. You can see the gender of the type of people that follow her, their age breakdown, what they do for a living, authors, writers, chefs, bloggers, the different brand affinities. So I say all that, just keep that in the back of your mind just for a second. Collaboration is really about, if we decide to work with Diana, we can manage all of the back and forth through the platform. So we can send her products, we can manage email communications. If we didn't want to go the traditional route, we can do it that way. These are people that also influence her and her network. so we can find other influencers. But going back to her audience here, just for 1 second, I want to show you one other technique. Okay. Now, remember, we talked about, let's say for going back to fitness. Now, maybe we don't want them, we don't care that they're, whether or not they work in the media. So we're just going to keep these keywords as is. And these are people, this is where you're going to find the actual gym folks, right? Who are in the gym 24/7 and maybe taking out calories, perhaps. And you'll start to get a different vibe of influencers, right? And, even from each other. So let's say, for example, though, we don't care what they do. We don't care what they're talking about. Let's say we want to find an influencer who has an audience that cares about beer. So it's a different way to think about it, right? We don't care. We're not looking for people talking about beer or craft beer or IPA. We want to find an influencer that their audience cares about beer. So in this case, I'm going to go over here to the interest. So what I'm going to do is oh, there we go, beer. So now what it's showing me is that it's going to show me every influencer with high percentage of audience that likes beer or prefers beer. So for example, this blogger here, Gavin Jackson, 92% of his audience is interested in beer. Now, even though he only has 11,000 followers, then still, the majority of the people who follow him, he is an authority in beer. I would also say this guy is as well. Most of these people, anything over like 40%, honestly, is these folks are influential. You can also type in, continue and say journalist. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to look within this data set to say, which journalist has a high percentage of followers that drink beer or like beer? This woman here, 82%. Tanya, 74%. You see are you guys catching? There's so many different ways to do this. Now let's take it one step further. I used to drink like a lot of IPA, but not so much more anymore. But so now I'm going to type in IPA in the keywords. So now we're looking for a journalist with an audience of beer enthusiasts who talks about IPA. So here on the right, we have Tanya. She has 74% of her audience are follower or who drink beer, as I'm just saying that. Maybe they don't, maybe they just like it. And she's mentioned IPA 256 times. And her resonance score is pretty high. Any questions on this? I wanted to just show you a few different examples just to show you how robust a platform like this could be. And by the way, like I said, there's like 45, 50, 60, I don't even know how many platforms that allow you to find influencers and manage the influencer program. So just kind of a basic understanding and walk through here is, I hope is beneficial for all of you, because as I said, you may have to go into an environment where maybe they have a platform called Creator IQ, which is another one, and as long as you kind of understand fundamentally how it works and what they use it for, then it should be easy for you to kind of learn it. So any questions on this at all? How many of you follow influencers like on Instagram or whatever? Okay. Do they influence you to buy or purchase products, or are they entertaining? Yeah. Okay.
More entertaining. I feel like I'm more influenced by the ads I get more than the influencers I follow.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Like for what type of products?
Like music equipment and clothes and stuff.
Yeah. I buy clothes from my Instagram feed. I don't think I'll ever do that again, because you get an extra large and it's like a small, and it's like skin tight.
Totally. It's terrible. Or you buy like a medium and it's like extra large.
Or you wash it and it like falls apart. It's like anyway.
No, I hate that stuff.
I'll digress. Nobody wants to hear my challenges in life. Anything else on 1990 model? Okay. Know that, study that, Google it. I have a video on it. I will share it I'll make it required watching. It's like 9 minutes or less. And where I kind of break down the model a little bit more. And in fact, on my channel, like I think 90% of my videos are about influencer marketing. So if that's an area that you're interested in and want to get into, like let's chat, let's talk, let's communicate, let's I'll help you because, as I said, it's the future, number one. Number two, like, even if you don't like it, you have to know it. You have to know it. So, please reach out to me if you want a little extra, conversation about it. Otherwise, there's a lot of resources on the internet. If you just Google, hold on, let me just stop recording.